Have you ever heard the sound a $500,000 mansion makes when a bulldozer crushes it? It doesn't crash, it screams. That sound was my birthday gift to my daughter. She stood there crying, watching her dream home turn to rubble. She thought she could steal my land, cut me out of my grandkids' lives, and treat me like trash. She forgot one thing. I didn't give her the land. I let her borrow it. And the lease just expired. I'm Frank, 68. I've learned that family often holds the sharpest knives. But before I explain how I legally destroyed my ungrateful daughter's future, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss this justice. I own 10 acres of prime real estate. It was my nest egg. My daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Mark, a guy who can't hold a job for more than a month, came to me begging. They were broke, expecting a second child, and drowning in rent. "Dad," Sarah pleaded, "let us build on your land. We can afford the loan for the house, but not the property. We'll be close. We'll take care of you." Mark grinned, looking at my land like he already owned it. "It's a win-win, Frank. A family compound." I wanted to believe them. I wanted my grandkids close. So, against my gut instinct, I agreed. "Okay," I said, "but we do this properly, legally." Mark laughed, thinking it was just a formality. "Sure, Frank. Whatever paperwork you want." He didn't know that paperwork would be the weapon that eventually destroyed him. I wasn't handing them a free ride, I was handing them a test. And they were about to fail it spectacularly. 2 days later, we sat in my lawyer's office. I slid a ground lease agreement across the desk. It wasn't a deed transfer. It was a rental contract for the dirt under their future house for $1 a year. But it had a trap. Clause 12 stated, "Landowner may terminate lease for hostile behavior. Tenant must restore land to original condition within 48 hours at their own expense." "Read it carefully," I warned. Mark didn't even look at the text. He laughed. "We're family, Frank. I don't need to read legal mumbo-jumbo," and signed. Sarah followed him. They signed their financial death warrants without blinking. Construction started fast. I called in favors, getting them the concrete foundation it cost, saving them $10,000. I spent my weekends clearing brush and hauling lumber to save them labor costs. But as the house walls went up, their respect for me came down. The shift happened when the roof was being installed. Mark pulled up in a brand-new leased BMW. He stepped out in a suit, looking at my muddy work boots with disgust. "Nice car," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I thought you were broke." "We saved a ton on the foundation thanks to your buddies, Frank. I figured we deserved a treat. I need to look successful." He had spent the money I saved him on a luxury car while I worked for free. But it got worse. "Hey, move your truck," Mark snapped, pointing to my pickup. "It's parked on our future lawn. I don't want oil stains on my property." "My property," I corrected him calmly. "It's my land, Mark." He let out a cold laugh. "Technically, sure. But let's be real, old man. This is our inheritance. We're just getting it early. So move the truck." I moved the truck without a word. I parked it back at my house and watched them from a distance. They didn't see a father helping them. They saw a servant they could discard. They had no idea that the document they ignored gave me the power to take it all away. 6 months later, the house was finished. It was magnificent, a sprawling, modern farmhouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wraparound porch. It looked like something out of a magazine. Despite Mark's arrogance during the build, I felt a swell of pride. My grandkids were going to grow up here. To celebrate their official move-in day, I built a handmade rocking chair for the nursery. It was solid oak, sanded to perfection. I loaded it into my truck and drove the quarter-mile up the gravel road to their new driveway. I pulled up to the electronic security gate. I had installed this gate myself 5 years ago to keep deer out. I rolled down my window and punched in my code. 1955. Beep. Red light. I frowned and tried again. Maybe my fingers slipped. 1955. Beep. Red light. Access denied. Confused, I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. No answer. I called Mark. He picked up on the fourth ring, sounding annoyed. "Frank? What's up? We're kind of busy unpacking." "Hey, Mark, I'm at the gate. My code isn't working. I think the keypad is glitched. Can you buzz me in? I have a gift for the baby." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Mark's voice came back, devoid of any warmth. "The keypad isn't broken, Frank. We changed the code." I blinked. "You changed the code? Why? I need to get in to drop off this chair." "Look," Mark sighed, as if explaining something to a child. "We talked about it, and we decided we really need to establish some boundaries. We want privacy. We can't just have you popping in whenever you feel like it. It stresses Sarah out." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Popping in? I'm your landlord. I'm your father-in-law. I'm living 500 yards away." "Exactly," he snapped. "It's too close. From now on, you need to call at least a week in advance. If we're free, we'll let you know. But right now, we're busy. Please turn around." "Mark, I'm holding a rocking chair for my grandson. Just open the gate." "No. Go home, Frank. Respect our space." Click. He hung up. I sat there in my idling truck, staring at the iron gate I had paid for, blocking me from the land I owned. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. I wanted to ram the gate. I wanted to drive straight up to that front door and tear it off the hinges. But I didn't. I looked at the private property sign they had already bolted to the fence. My fence. A cold calm washed over me. They wanted boundaries? Fine. I put the truck in reverse and turned around. The rocking chair rattled in the back as I drove away. They had just locked out the only person who could save them from themselves. A month later, the grand opening party happened. I wasn't invited. I saw catering trucks and luxury cars lining the road I maintained. My daughter was throwing a gala on my land, and I was excluded. I couldn't help myself. I put on my best shirt, grabbed a $5,000 check for the grandkids, and walked up the hill. I told myself, maybe the invitation got lost. The gate was open. Music thumped. People drank champagne on the porch. Sarah spotted me immediately. Her face went pale, then hard. She rushed down the stairs to intercept me before I reached the guests. "Dad," she hissed, "what are you doing here?" I held up the envelope. "I saw the party. I brought a gift for the kids." She looked around nervously. "We didn't invite you for a reason. Look at you." She gestured at my work boots. "You don't fit in. Mark is trying to make business connections. Having you here, wandering around like a lost gardener, is embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" I asked, stunned. "I paid for this foundation. I own the dirt under your feet." "Stop it," she snapped. "Stop holding that over us. That's why we don't want you around the kids. You're manipulative and toxic. We've outgrown you." She pointed to the road. "Please leave before Mark calls security. Don't make a scene." She turned her back and walked up to her rich friends. I stood there, holding the check, alone in the shadow of the house I helped build. I didn't make a scene. I turned around and walked back to my empty house. But the sadness was gone. In its place was cold, hard resolve. They wanted to play big shots? Fine. I was about to remind them that even the biggest castles fall when the ground beneath them shakes. Monday morning, I was waiting at George's office door before he even unlocked it. I didn't look like a heartbroken father anymore. I looked like a businessman closing a deal. We sat down, and I recounted every insult, the changed locks, and the humiliation at the party. George, who has known me for 30 years, listened in silence. When I finished, he didn't offer sympathy. He opened the file labeled Frank's Estate. They breached the contract, Frank, George said, tapping the paper. Clause 4, good conduct. Clause 7, landowner access. And the big one, Clause 12. He read it aloud, savoring the words. Landowner reserves the right to terminate the ground lease immediately upon evidence of hostile actions by the tenant. Upon termination, tenant must remove all structures and restore land to original condition within 48 hours. Is calling me toxic and kicking me off my own land hostile enough? I asked. It's more than enough, George confirmed. We can serve them the eviction notice today. We can have the sheriff there by noon. I shook my head. No, not today. George looked confused. Why? You want them out, don't you? I do. But if I do it today, they just lose the house. They can sell the materials, maybe salvage something. I want them to feel what I felt. I want them to be at their highest point before I pull the rug out. I leaned forward. Sarah's 30th birthday is in 3 weeks. She's planning a massive outdoor bash. Catering, live band, the works. She's spending money she doesn't have to impress people she doesn't like. George's eyes widened. Then a slow grin spread across his face. You want to serve them on her birthday? I want to serve them when the house is full of witnesses, I said, cold as ice. I want the demolition crew parked at the gate while she blows out her candles. I want the maximum financial and social damage possible. George closed the folder. That is cold, Frank. I love it. I'll prepare the paperwork. You just give the signal. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize they had just dug their own graves on leased land. The waiting was the hardest part. For the next 2 weeks, I watched from my window as they prepared for the party of the century. Delivery trucks arrived daily. They were installing a massive outdoor sound system and setting up white tents on the lawn I used to mow. They were spending money like they were royalty. 1 week before the big day, I decided to give them one final chance. Call it a father's weakness. I needed to know, for my own soul, that I had tried everything before I pressed the nuclear button. I saw Mark down by the main road, supervising a crew that was installing expensive landscape lighting along the driveway. I walked down to the fence line. When he saw me, his face twisted into a sneer. He didn't even say hello. "What do you want, Frank?" he asked, not bothering to look up from his clipboard. "I told you to keep your distance." "I just wanted to talk, Mark," I said calmly. "Sarah's birthday is coming up. It's a big milestone. I don't want to be enemies. I want to see my daughter and my grandkids. Is there any way we can fix this? I'm willing to apologize if you felt I overstepped." I was offering him an olive branch. I was offering him a lifeline. Mark finally looked at me. He laughed, a cruel barking sound. He took a step closer to the fence, looking me up and down with pure contempt. "Fix this. There's nothing to fix, old man. We like things exactly how they are. We have the house, we have the land, and we don't have you breathing down our necks." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And just so you know, Sarah and I are meeting with a lawyer next week. We're going to file for a restraining order. We're going to argue that you're senile and unstable. You'll never see those kids again. So enjoy your view from across the field, because it's the only one you're ever going to get." He turned his back on me and shouted at the workers to work faster. I stood there for a moment, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I had given them a chance. I had tried to be the bigger man. In return, they threatened to use the law to take my family away forever. "Okay, Mark," I said quietly to his back. "Enjoy the party." He didn't answer. He didn't know it, but he had just confirmed his own destruction. There was no turning back now. The demolition crew was booked, and I was done being a father. I was just a landlord dealing with a bad tenant. The morning of Sarah's 30th birthday arrived with a bright, cloudless sky. It was a perfect day for a party. It was also a perfect day for demolition. I woke up at 5 a.m., but I hadn't really slept. I drank my coffee black, standing on my porch, watching the flurry of activity up the hill. They were going all out. I saw a florist van unloading thousands of dollars worth of white roses. A stage was being erected for a live band. It looked more like a royal wedding than a birthday party. At 8 a.m., I made the first call. It was to Big Mike, an old friend who ran the largest excavation company in the county. "Mike," I said, my voice steady, "are we still on for today?" "We're locked and loaded, Frank." Mike's deep voice crackled over the line. "I've got the D9 bulldozer on the lowboy trailer. My guys are parked at the old logging road, just out of sight. We can be at the main gate in 3 minutes." "Good," I said. "Wait for my signal. And Mike, don't stop for anyone but me or the sheriff." "You got it, boss." Next, I drove into town to see Sheriff Miller. Jim Miller and I went to high school together. He was a good man, a fair man, but he didn't like drama. I walked into his office and laid the court order and the signed lease agreement on his desk. Jim read them carefully, his eyebrows knitting together. He looked up at me, a pained expression on his face. "Frank, this is nuclear. You really want to do this on her birthday? Can't you just serve them papers?" "They threatened to take my grandkids away, Jim," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "They want to claim I'm senile. They want to erase me. This isn't just about a house anymore. It's about showing them that actions have consequences." Jim sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew the law. He knew I was within my rights. "All right, the document is sound. It's a valid eviction and demolition order based on breach of contract. I'll come out there myself, not to help you tear it down, but to make sure no one gets hurt when things get heated." "That's all I ask," I replied. I drove back home and put on my suit. Not a work shirt, but the suit I wore to funerals. It felt appropriate. By 2 p.m., the party was in full swing. I could hear the bass of the music thumping through my walls. There were easily 100 people up there. I saw Mark walking around with a glass of scotch, shaking hands, playing the Lord of the Manor. He looked so confident, so untouchable. I checked my watch. 2:30 p.m. I sent a text to Big Mike. "Move out." Then I picked up the eviction notice, walked out my door, and started the long walk up the hill. The music was loud, but it wasn't loud enough to drown out the low, terrifying rumble of heavy diesel engines starting up in the distance. The ground began to vibrate. The show was about to begin. The walk up the driveway felt like a funeral procession. Beside me, Sheriff Miller kept his hand on his belt, face grim. Behind us, unseen but audible, a transport truck shifted gears. I stepped onto the lawn. The music died instantly. Silence fell over the crowd as they spotted the uniform. Mark stormed over, face red. "Frank, I told you if you came here, I'd have you arrested. Get out!" He stopped dead when Sheriff Miller stepped forward. "Sheriff?" Mark stammered. "Officer, remove this man. He's trespassing." Miller didn't blink. "Actually, Mark, he's not trespassing. You are." A gasp went through the guests. Mark laughed nervously. "This is my house." "Is it?" I spoke up, holding up the contract. "Or is it a house on land you lease? A lease you just violated?" I shoved the papers into his chest. Clause 12. Termination due to hostile conduct. You threatened to take my grandkids. You banned me from my own property. Now I'm evicting you. "You can't do this," Mark shouted, shaking. We have guests. This is insane." "I'm not just kicking you out," I whispered, cold enough for only him to hear. "I'm erasing you." On cue, the ground shook. A massive yellow D9 bulldozer roared around the corner, black smoke pouring from its stack. The guests screamed and scrambled back as the steel beast halted at the gate. I checked my watch. "You have exactly 1 hour to get your kids and jewelry out. Anything left inside when that engine revs up becomes landfill." Mark looked at the machine, then at me. The party was over. The nightmare had begun. The next hour was absolute chaos. It wasn't a party anymore. It was an evacuation. Guests sprinted to their cars, dropping champagne glasses in the grass. It looked like the deck of the Titanic. What disgusted me most was watching Mark and Sarah. They didn't run to the kids first. The nanny did. Mark ran inside to save his 85-inch TV and golf clubs. Sarah grabbed her jewelry box and designer purses. It confirmed everything. They loved their stuff more than their family. At 3:30 p.m., Sheriff Miller walked through the house one last time to ensure it was empty. He stepped out, nodded at me, and moved the crowd back behind the safety line. Mark stood by his pile of expensive junk, panting. "You won't do it, Frank," he yelled, though his voice shook. "You're bluffing. No father destroys his daughter's home." I looked at him coldly. "I'm not a father right now, Mark. I'm a landlord enforcing a contract." I turned to Big Mike in the D9 cab and gave the thumbs up. The engine roared like a waking dragon. Black smoke shot into the sky. Mike dropped the massive steel blade and rolled forward. The first crunch was sickening. The blade hit the wraparound porch, the one I had helped sand by hand. It splintered like matchsticks. The machine didn't slow down. It drove straight into the living room. Then came the sound. That screaming sound I told you about. The floor-to-ceiling windows shattered all at once, an explosion of glass. The structural beams groaned and snapped with a noise like a gunshot. The roof sagged, then collapsed inward in a cloud of dust and drywall. Sarah fell to her knees in the dirt, wailing, "Daddy, please, please stop! We're sorry!" I didn't look away. I watched as the master bedroom, where they planned to lock me out of their lives, crumbled into dust. It took less than 30 minutes. The dream home was gone. In its place was a jagged mountain of wood, insulation, and broken dreams. As the dust settled, I walked over to Mark. He was pale, staring at the ruin. "You're insane," he whispered. "We have a $400,000 mortgage on that house. The bank, they'll kill us." "That's right," I said calmly. "You still owe the bank for the construction loan. But now you don't have an asset. And since you violated the ground lease, insurance won't cover a dime." I leaned in close. "You wanted to be independent? Congratulations. You're on your own." The silence after the bulldozer engine turned off was heavier than the noise of the destruction. There was no party, no music, just a mountain of debris where a mansion once stood. Mark and Sarah stood in the dirt, staring at the ruins of their arrogance. They didn't scream at me anymore. They were too broken to speak. They tried to sue me, of course. A week later, I got a notice that they were filing for damages. But my lawyer, George, had done his job perfectly. The ground lease agreement was ironclad. The judge threw their case out in less than 10 minutes. Since they had violated the good conduct clause, I was within my legal rights to reclaim my land. The financial fallout for them was catastrophic. They still owed the bank over $400,000 for the construction loan. Usually, the house acts as collateral, but the house didn't exist anymore. The bank called in the loan. Mark and Sarah had to declare bankruptcy. They lost the BMW, the designer clothes, and their high society status. They moved into a small rental apartment in the city, ironically, smaller than the one they started in. As for me, I spent a few $1,000s to clear the debris. I didn't build another house there. Instead, I planted a massive garden and built a small playground for the neighborhood kids. I hear laughter on my property again, but this time, it's genuine. I'm traveling now. I bought an RV and I'm seeing the country, fishing in Montana and hiking in Arizona. I'm spending my money on my own happiness, not on ungrateful children who wanted to bury me before I was dead. Some people in town say I'm a monster. They say a father should forgive anything. But I sleep soundly at night. I learned that respect is a two-way street, and sometimes you have to burn a bridge to stop the enemy from crossing it. Now, I turn the question to you. Was I a bitter old man who took it too far? Or did I teach two spoiled adults a necessary lesson about gratitude and consequences? If you were in my shoes, standing at that gate being told you'd never see your grandkids again, what would you have done? Would you have walked away, or would you have started the bulldozer? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of nuclear revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I have plenty more stories from a long life lived on my own terms, and you won't want to miss them. The end. Thank you for listening.